Nirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Shakshurmiritam Yena Tasme Shri Gurave Namah Gaurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Speaking about the Alvar, this is the last session on the Alvar. We're not going to be able to see all of them, but I just wanted to share something. So the next in the list is Tiruppan Alvar. Tiruppan Alvar was also born in South India, and he was born as a Chandala. Chandala are outside of the Vedic tradition, and so therefore he could not enter the local temple of Sri Rangam, and he was playing a veena. He was playing some musical instrument, and day in and day out he was just singing and being absorbed in the Lord's names and his lila. But one day one pujari from the temple happened to he was in a hurry, and this Tiruppan Alvar was on the way. He was on the pathway, and he was so absorbed that he didn't notice the pujari. And the pujari felt that this person should move. He said, "Moved, you are impure person. If I touch you, then I cannot serve Sri Ranganath." But he was not hearing anything. So the pujari picked up a stone and threw him in his face. And blood started oozing from his face. And he broke out of his meditation, and he noticed that he was on the pathway of this Brahmin who was a pujari. So I said, "Oh, please excuse me, I didn't notice." So he stepped aside. And the pujari went inside the temple and inside the pujari room and on the altar. And he noticed that Sri Ranganath was not, didn't seem to be happy. See, like if you serve a deity, you can see the mood of the deity, that sometimes the deity is happy, sometimes he's not happy, sometimes he's sad, and so on and so forth. And so he was a little worried. And Ranganath at one point spoke to him. He said, "You have hurt my pure devotee, Tiruppan Alvar, and you threw a stone in his face." And so he was also bleeding. The deity was also bleeding. And so he said, "You should go and pick up this great Vaishnav, bring him here, put him on the shoulder and bring him here. I want to hear his glorification." So the pujari was really amazed. And he went to see Tiruppan Alvar, and he told him what the Lord has told him. And he said, "I have to bring you in." And he says, No, I cannot. I am a low class person, and you cannot bring me in. And he said, "No, I'm going to carry you on my shoulder." So I said, "No, I cannot." But the pujari insisted, "This is the Lord wishes. You cannot contradict the Lord wishes." So he said, "Okay, that's a Lord wish." So they put him on he put him on his shoulder, the pujari, and he went into the temple. Now Tiruppan Alvar, this is the first time he saw this deity, this beautiful deity of Sri Rangam, Sri Ranganath. And he was so overwhelmed with ecstasy seeing the deity that he broke out in so many different verses of glorification that are still sung today in Sri Rangam for the Lord's waking call. And he merged into the deity. He disappeared. He merged into the deity. So there was Tiruppan Alvar. The next in line is Peri Alvar. Peri Alvar is also born in South India, and he was a devotee from his birth and a poor brahmana. He's from the Bhatta family, so this is a specific title in South India, Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, for example. So his father was Mukunda Bhatta, and himself was called Vishnu Chitta Bhatta. But then he became Peri Alvar. He was absorbed in the Leela of Krishna. He was absorbed in that mood of Sudama, the person who was actually making garlands of flowers for Krishna and Balaram when they entered Mathura and they were about to kill Kamsa. And so he decided to make all the time some beautiful flower garland. And the Murti of his village appeared in his dream and told him to go see the king of Madurai. And when he woke up, he says, I'm a poor and illiterate, and you want me to go and present myself to the king, who was always surrounded by pundits. Then the Murti told him, don't worry, I will arrange everything. So he came to Madurai, and the king's ministers, they welcomed him. They told him that he could speak to the king. And as Dhruva Maharaj, when he saw Vishnu and couldn't speak, then Vishnu touched him with the conch, and beautiful poetry came out of his mouth. So the same way, inspired by the Lord, this Peri Alvar started saying wonderful things about how Vishnu is the Supreme Lord and no one else can replace him. He only opened his mouth and the Lord spoke through him. And nobody could say anything. It was so perfect. Perfect Siddhanta, perfect poetry. The king himself said, this man has revealed the light of all Vedanta. And he said he should be taken to a procession throughout the entire city. So this is what happened. He went into a procession. He was the main host of that procession. And this Peri Alvar, his speciality was that he was in Vatsalya Bhava. Just like Nama Alvar was absorbed in some kind of Madhurya Rasa, and also Kulashika Alvar was in the Madhurya Rasa. So it was some kind of Madhurya, but mainly Vatsalya Rasa. So similarly, he was absorbed in Vatsalya Rasa in the role of Yashoda. When he was saying the young baby Krishna, he will sometime say to baby Krishna, oh my precious little baby. He's looking at the moon. With his small hand, he's pointing at the moon. He wants the moon. And then he says in his Vatsalya Bhava, oh moon, please, if you desire to play with him, come down without hiding yourself behind the clouds. And sometimes he will be speaking about the beauty of Krishna. May you have your ears decorated with flowers. Your lovely eyes are soothing like the cool black clouds. You manifested yourself for the sole purpose of protecting all the living beings in the universe. You are the Lord of the goddess who is your prosperity. You are lying in the Sri Ranga temple to save those who seek you. This is interesting. He's addressing Krishna, but he's saying as Sri Rangam, the Vishnu deity in Sri Rangam, the Ranganath. Because just like Mahaprabhu, when he was in front of Jagannath, he would not see Jagannath with big round eyes. He will see Krishna playing the flute. So this Alvar will see Krishna playing the flute. No, not Krishna playing the flute, baby Krishna in the Vishnu deity. Sometimes he will also speak as one of the old gopi who were complaining, young gopi, who were complaining to Mother Yashoda about the mischief of young Krishna. In the word of a gopi, of a young gopi, he said, Krishna has thrown mud at me and the other gopis while we were playing in the sand of the river Yamuna. As we were taking our bath in the river, keeping aside our clothes and ornament, he ran away with our clothes and hid himself inside the house. Even though we appealed to him by calling him his name several times, he kept silent without responding to our request. And he was always describing all the different lila of Krishna, like Putana, killing of Putana, like Trinavarta, and so on and so forth. He was always absorbed in this mood. And because he was in Vatsalya Rasa, then one day he discovered a young baby girl that was in the field. Nobody knows how she happened to be in the field. And he adopted this little girl, and he gave her the name Andal. Andal or Goda, this is the next Alvar, and this is the only Alvar who is a woman. And so this Alvar, actually she's an incarnation of Bhu Shakti. Vishnu has many different kind of Shakti. And Shri Shakti, Bhu Shakti, Nila Shakti are the main one. Actually there's only one Shakti. This is Swarupa Shakti, this is Srimati Radhika, and everything comes from her. But in order to have this pastime, the Bhu-Shakti is actually the material energy. This is called the Bhu-Mandal. The earth is situated in a Bhu-Mandal, a mandal made of different other kinds of location, not only the earth planet. And so this Bhu-Shakti, she's the energy. Sometimes she's appears in different form, like she's the energy of Baraha. Barahadev, he is sometimes represented with this female energy, Barahi. This is Bhu-Shakti. And Lakshmi, this is also another Shakti, the Shri Shakti. Anyway, she was absorbed also in doing those flower garlands for the Lord. And she was growing up very beautifully. She was becoming very beautiful. And she had one time, the father, he saw his daughter taking the flower garland, putting her on herself, the garland that was supposed to be offered to Ranganath, and she was putting it on herself, and watching herself in the mirror, seeing, admiring how beautiful she was. So the father became very alarmed. He said, "What are you doing? This was meant to be offered to Ranganath, to Sri Ranganath. Now that you have put this into yourself, then we cannot offer it." So he took the garland and discarded it. And he made another garland. He brought to Sri Ranganath. Then when he was about to put it around the neck of Sri Ranganath, then it broke. And then he made another garland and put it again on the neck of Ranganath, and it broke again. And 3 times, 4 times like this, like Mother Yashoda when she's trying to tie up baby Krishna with rope, she's never be able to do it. And similarly, he's not able to put a garland on his beautiful deity, and he becomes very disturbed. And he's tired, so he kind of dozes off, and his half dream, the Lord appeared to him and spoke to him. He told him, "Oh, my dear Peri, I am very pleased with your service. You are doing all these beautiful garlands for me, but I think that I like even better the garlands that are made by your daughter, Goda. And I want her to make me the garland." So he woke up and he went back to see his daughter, and he says, "When I surprised you when you were wearing this garland in front of the mirror, what were you doing?" So she answered, "Oh, actually the Lord, I've noticed he's about the same height as me, and so I was trying to see if the garland was falling properly, not too low, not too little, that it was properly, so I was just looking at this." So the father became really amazed. He said, "Oh, I didn't know this Siddhanta before. This is some kind of higher, more intimate Siddhanta." And she was growing up. She was becoming very beautiful, and he was thinking, "Oh, maybe I should marry her. I should find a husband for her. But it's going to be difficult. She has so many good qualities. She's so beautiful. Maybe I should ask her." And when he spoke about this subject matter to his daughter, she asked to see some picture of the famous deities of the world. And as she was looking at different deities of the world, she says, pointing to Sri Ranganath, he says, "This is the person I want to marry. Only him." So the father was amazed. "But you cannot marry a murti. He's made of stone. This is not a real man." He said, "No, I only marry him. I don't want any of those other husband full of hair and disgusting." Just like Rukmini Devi, when she wrote a letter to Krishna, she said, "I don't want any men, mortal men. They have beard and mustache and they smell. But you are the only one that I want to marry, Krishna." So similarly, actually Andal or Goda Alvar, from her very childhood, she has always dreamed to marry Sri Ranganath. And so it happened that actually the father, he was at home, and he heard there was a big procession going into the temple of Sri Rangam. And he asked the people, "What is happening?" Oh, some people were very happy. They said, "Well, the deity Sri Ranganath has decided to get married today." So he was very puzzled. He said, why? What was happening? Married to whom? He said, to your daughter. So he said, but this is not possible. And he saw his daughter sitting on a very nice throne, and everybody was singing, playing instrument, and he was following, completely bewildered. And they entered the temple, and he saw her daughter climbing down the throne and walking up the alley and stepping on the altar. And then he was saying, what are you doing? You cannot go on the altar. This is forbidden. And he saw his daughter sitting down on the murti. Then he lost his mind. He fainted. The father fainted. And when he woke up again, everybody told him, your daughter disappeared, merged into the murti. Actually, she wrote very beautiful poetry describing a wedding to Sri Rangana. She was absorbed in the mood of the gopi. She described in one of the books, she describes how she is one of the young gopi, who is taking this Katyayani Vrata. And the gopis are singing Katyayani Mahamaye Mahayogini Balishware Nanda Gopa Sutam Devi Patime Kurutem Namaha. Please, O Katyayani, O Mahadevi, please let Krishna become my husband. And they were practicing this vow during the after Kartik month, going into the cold water. And then when Krishna heard about this, when the vow was completed, then he went and stole the cloth. We have already heard this by the father, Peri Alvar. He was describing the young gopis, how they were complaining to Mother Yashoda. But he was not identifying himself with one of those gopis. But Andal, she thinks she's one of these gopi. This is described in Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He's describing how the Sadarani Karana. Sadarani Karana means you get so absorbed in the mood of what you're hearing, you identify yourself with one of the person in the story. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives an example. One day there was a person narrating Rama Leela, and he was describing how when Ram left for the forest, King Dasharat, he could not bear the separation, so he left his body. And hearing this, one person in the audience, he identified himself so much with King Dasharat that immediately he left his body too. And another time that someone else was telling the story of Hanuman, how he will go and go to Sri Lanka with one jump. And one person was sitting down, and as soon as he heard this, he jumped into the room like a frog, or more like a frog, like Hanuman, really. And so this is Sadarani Karana, means you identify yourself. And so Andal, she was identify herself with a young maid. And she even speaks about Srimati Radhika. She has a different name for Srimati Radhika. She said, wake up, we are going to have this vow for obtaining Krishna as our husband. And so in the other book, she describes how she was in love with Krishna from her birth, from her childhood, and she described the whole procession, how she's going to marry Sri Rangana. So those Alvars are very special, and they give us some indication how Bhakti is something very old, because we're talking about the beginning of the age of Kali. 5,000 years ago, those Alvars appeared, and they put the foundation of what Bhakti could become. And the culmination for us is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appear as a devotee in the disguise of a devotee, experiencing the Leela of Srimati Radhika and distributing this to all of us who want to experience Prema Bhakti. Panchakalpatarubhya kripa sindhubhya ivacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.